Leading is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It takes effort and it takes work, and it's not just, so you can get in there and tell people what to do. That's not what leading is about.
Absolutely. We say all guts, no glory. There's a lot of, it requires a lot of guts.
Get ready, drop the confetti. Get ready, drop the confetti.
Welcome to Remarkable Minds, hosted by Daniel Stark Leaders. Here we unbox insights for professional growth. My name is Claudia Yanez. I do marketing and sales here at Daniel Stark. And today joining us is Amy, our Chief Financial Officer, and then Brittany, one of our Associate Directors of Operations. So welcome back, ladies. How are y'all?
Good.
Thank you.
Nice. So today we have a really fun topic: stop managing, start leading. And probably immediate things come to mind. Let's just get some knee-jerk thoughts of like what comes to mind when you hear stop managing, start leading.
I think the first thing I think about is trust. Is stop micromanaging and start trusting your team.
Okay. What about you? We're going to get into that real quick.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I thought about. It came to building a team. If you build the right team and you give them the autonomy and freedom they need, you can do a lot of things.
Absolutely. The first initial thing that comes to mind is probably does not create trust or safety is if I'm having to manage you, then I got the wrong person.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing that probably roll tongue in cheek, probably pretty strong. But so let's talk about now. Let's get into what managing versus leading is. What do you want to manage versus what you don't want to manage?
So for me, and it also depends on how much work experience the team member has. So if I have someone brand new out of school, they're going to need more guidance or structure because they've never done it before. But in general, I want to let people tell them what their job is and let them get their job done. So set expectations for their outcomes and what we're looking for. And then they can figure out the process of how you get from A to Z without me giving them each step of the way.
Yeah. Fun fact here at Daniel Stark, no one in leadership is called a manager. Like we really take that word out of the name because we don't want that. There's this, what is it? This perceived notion and just it comes with a lot of negative stigma, the word manager.
Or how about the fact we don't call anybody an employee?
Oh, yeah.
We're
We
all
definitely
team
don't
members.
call.
Staff.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't call
We're
staff. We don't
top to
say
bottom.
employees.
We are all team members.
Team members.
That's
and then
right.
we call team leaders.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. What were some of your thoughts that you were going to?
Yeah, going back to trust, I feel like if you have to manage a team member, it could be either things. Either you have an inability to let go of control, because sometimes it's the manager's issue and not necessarily the team members, to trust your team and let go. And there's something about yourself that you don't trust that you did a good enough job that this person can just go and do it. You just need to let it go. And then on the other side, there's something that in this team member that you don't trust to actually be proactive and manage their time well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll circle back because you like head dive into the trust, and I want to get there. And I'm gonna come back to this early notion of like when you're in a leadership role or in some sort of manager role, the things that you want to manage is your expectations. You want to manage maybe the training and the tools that you're giving your team. And you want to manage the way you are going to hold accountable. But the way that you do all of that, like you want to actually lead your team members through that process. And like you said, there's a inability sometimes to lead well, depending on maybe some of the strengths and areas of constraints that person may have, or the person on your team. That requires a lot of trust. When you're building that out. And the other concept that I want to make sure that we touch upon is Daniel's Pink, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And when you have that, you have high levels of job satisfaction. So let's go back to trust building. What are some of the things immediately that come into mind that from a team member's perspective and a team lead perspective, where you can kind of help bridge that gap and build that trust there?
Expectations, for sure. Going back to what Amy was talking about with outcomes and expectations. If you tell people like these are the 3 things that you need to get done, and if you are hitting those goals, everything else should just follow. And if they're able to do that, then they're able to have the trust with me to continue to do their job without me having to deep dive.
Yeah, and that trust looks like autonomy. And in that point, it's like I don't need to know, the specifics of what you're doing or when you're going to do them, as long as you're meeting your deadlines.
Well, and that's
the
what
work
I
product looks
find
good.
is if we set regular communication, so whether it's our weekly level 10 or, for instance, some of our teams, when we're planning larger events, we have what is a loop, so it's like a to-do list. But if you're keeping those communication lines open and you can see the progress and they're reporting back and you've made it clear, if you run into a problem, come get me. Otherwise, I'm going to assume everything's going well. And as long as those communications are happening, then you feel like everything's good. There's trust there. They feel good about the project, and you feel good about the outcome.
There's something you said, Amy, that I want to touch on about if they need help to come to you. That's another thing I think of when I think of trust building, because I also put a lot of trust that because nobody's perfect. You're going to fall short. And when you do, I expect you to speak up. I expect you to come tell me, and not suffer in silence, and then I find a dumpster fire later. There is a lot of trust building with you coming and telling me, hey, I can't get to everything, or hey, I made a mistake.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you can't get to some of those expectations. And like you said, early on, there's a lot more hand-holding that's taking place. You're walking them through the process, showing them how to do it. And at some point, you clearly communicate to them. We all, as people who oversee their own teams, we tell them okay, training wheels are coming off, or hey, you're on your own now. I'm available. You just tell them how they can access you, and again, what the finished product needs to look like, what those outcomes are, and then you just let them do their thing.
Yeah. And you're always gonna fail at something as a team member or a young person, and I think the way the leader responds to that can severely impact someone's entire career path. Because if you have someone who gives you grace and understanding, and will go back and hey, let's figure out where did this go wrong, or what happened, or what could we have done different, versus an anger or something like that,
Or shame and blame.
or shame or blame, you've set them up for to come to you next time without any fear of being in trouble, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's that a manager, what did you do? How did you fail at this? And the leader is hey, what did we fail to look at? What did we not consider? What expectations did we not make clear, so that we can learn from this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes me think of a common quote and saying is that you're hard on problems, not on people. And I think that's one of the big things I always when people see a passion, or I feel really strongly about a particular topic. It's you could easily want to maybe internalize that and be like, oh, she's upset with me, or she's frustrated with me. And so I try to be extra careful. I'm upset at the process. I'm upset about the problem that we created. How can we get better at this? I feel passionate about this, and I need you. I want you by my side. I want to figure out how can we do this together to solve the problem.
Well, I have a quick personal story that it sealed how I would be a leader from then on. I was working at a public accounting firm, and I had done some work. I was very new, really didn't have a clue what I was doing. And my manager, had reviewed some of my work. And when she put it back on my desk in red Sharpie in about 50-point font, she said, "Are you stupid?"
Literally just wrote that.
Yeah, on the top cover sheet. And that was a document that was going to stay with the tax file. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh,
Wow.
I will never do that.
Yeah. That must be, I'm processing that as I hear you say that, because that makes me so angry to hear that there are actually managers that are put in these positions where they're meant to lead their teams. And what did that person lead you to do, other than eventually you found your way over to Danielle Stark?
I did. But it also impacted how I viewed her from that day forward. I was terrified to make a mistake, because public humiliation was the way that she handled it.
And that's leading with shame and blame there. And
absolutely.
that's something that we try to absolutely sway away from.
Sure.
Because leaders want to encourage you. They want to empower you and inspire you to hone in on your strengths and to grow your areas of constraint to get to the outcome that you want to get to, not by constraining you further and creating a narrative or feeding an inner narrative that you may already have.
Sure.
And so Wow. So kind of going in, let's talk about our leaders and how they hone into those strengths and maybe find areas of constraints that they need to work on. What are some of those preliminary things or assessments that we're doing on the leadership side to see that those first initial flags kind of come into view?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we've done is we have leaders retake our success survey, which we've talked about before in our hiring process. And it's easy to see like where people struggle even with autonomy or with like self-criticality and confidence level. And a big thing I see amongst leaders is imposter syndrome. That's normally 8 out of 10 of them. We're going to work through imposter syndrome and show them that they've earned a seat at the table and that they're committed to continuous improvement. For me, what my journey looked like was really struggling with my tone and my directness. I think I came off as a manager my first few years as a leader, not realizing it. And a lot of that was because of my tone and coming off in a way that was, I didn't want to be embarrassed. I wanted to make sure that our team was sharp and that they were seen as sharp. And that image is what I was protecting more than my team members. And it took a lot of like accountability on their part and just some open conversations for me to realize that and make the shift into a leader and caring more about the person.
I imagine that took some time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what were some of the, like, for yourself, like, the work that you had to do as a leader to get to that place? And what have you seen that reward you in?
So it took about probably a solid 2 years for me to get where I wanted to be. First, it was about me taking a look at myself and figuring out where this was coming from. You know, why was this so important to me to have this perfect image, you know, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so I was able to own that part and work through it. And then the other side of it was I wasn't being vulnerable with my team. And that was something that was causing a rift between us. You know, I never really gave them the opportunity to take care of me as well. And that's what they were wanting. Like, we're talking about a bunch of caretakers, you know, people who have servant's heart, and I wasn't allowing them. I was keeping them at a distance. And so whenever I unlocked that part for me, which took a lot of personal work that I had to do, I saw a change immediately with how they responded to me. More of a person they wanted to follow, not that they had to follow. And I feel like I gained even more respect from them. I mean, they respected me because of my numbers, but this was the first time I felt respected because of who I was as a person. And so that was a game changer. And being able to be open and honest with them, it made us closer and a stronger team, even when things, you know, emotions are high, or when people, you know, we have to separate different paths because they're going somewhere else. We still were able to keep that connection because it didn't stem from numbers and KPIs. It stemmed from a true heart connection.
Yeah.
So mine too. I let my team members see I fail sometimes too, and so I'm never perfect, although I try to be. I don't know if I'm as far down my recovery of being a perfectionist as you are, but or if that will ever go away. But letting them see I'm also human, and then sometimes bringing them into the solution, like, hey, look, we're gonna miss this deadline, or I just did, and you know, let's all gather together and let's figure out how to get this done.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite things, and maybe a little bit too much, is my flexibility. Is I am very emotionally flexible, just kind of roll with the punches. And I know that sometimes can come across as not structured, but for me, where I see it be very helpful is when things don't go your way. It's just, we'll figure it out as we go. It's just kind of that resilient mentality that I hope to foster in my team. And that because I also have perfectionists on the team. So when things don't go their way, things that they really want to manage, because you see that. You see when you have perfectionists on the team and how they're going to then lead or manage your team members, is you're going to wear down your team if you want things done a very particular way, because you think that there's no other better outcome than the vision that you have in your head on it.
That's true.
And that is going to feel very exhausted for your team members, and you're going to see that.
It's hard on you.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you can't let some of that go, you're going to burn out immediately.
Absolutely. You're going to spend too much time in the nitty-gritty rather than maybe a high-level view, or maybe taking some opportunity of other areas that you can grow or go learn in, by being able to like let some of that go. Now, I do agree that we do need to delegate.
Yeah.
And one of our favorite, EOS process is delegate and elevate. You can't do one without the other. Explain what that means to you, Brittany.
So for me, it's making sure that I'm putting something where it really belongs. And that when that tool was brought to us, that it was so much of it that I was not giving other people the opportunity to learn in themselves. And so delegate is where I started because that was what I had more of the control over. And I was able to delegate to my team leads. And it's been really fun. I mean, that's been a year now of watching them take on these tasks and learn more. And they feel challenged in their role. And then elevate, that one I struggled with because I always want to do everything. And I'm like, I can just do it. But I don't realistically have the time for it. And so the first one I ever did, and I gave to somebody else to take, like I watched them like a hawk from the side. I'm like, please, like handle it with love and care. Like, did you do that right? Like, oh, I felt like somebody who like wrote a song and somebody else is singing it. It's like, oh, that was supposed to be like a different note, but okay, see what you did there. And it was rewarding though. Like after it was done, it happened in Austin, and so we were driving back, and I was like, that was so much fun to get to see my idea like from the sidelines and not just be fully in it. And since then, I've really enjoyed that process of getting to kind of not be the one that kicks the bird out of the nest and just watch it fly.
Absolutely. And I've had a conversation even with other team leads about delegating of when it does go wrong. And we delegate, but then we didn't elevate our team members. Like you didn't delegate, like you said, putting it where it actually goes or where it could belong. And so part of that discernment is making sure that who you're giving that to has the tools and the training, like to actually perform whatever it is the task or the project is. And that's kind of like your guardrail so that they don't fall off the cliff there. You want to make sure that you're elevating them with the proper tools, training, encouragement, etc. to do that. And so when we are not elevating our people, you're not actually bringing them and you're just delegating downward, you're gonna create a problem,
Right.
that you're probably later going to have to go and fix. And a lot of times when businesses are growing really fast or there's a problem maybe in our systems where we are having this trickle down effect where we're getting a lot of projects, on our plate. So that means we need to delegate and we're pushing things through and delegating. When we're doing it too fast without thought and attention, we create those problems. And so can you think of those times? I know that I have at least 4 or 5 that I can easily think of where we're going too fast. We got to slow down. And it was a systematic problem, like as an organization as a whole, because we love growing, we're evolving, we're going at a high speed. And sometimes we need to slow down. I want us to grow. We all want to grow. We all want to evolve. But let's put the process and the system in place to catch and make sure that we also have our team members in place so that we're not doing it at their detriment or at the detriment of the firm and the organization or even worse, our clients.
Well, I think we're getting a lot better at that right there. We took some time this year to even reflect and be like, man, pump the brakes. We have to have a process, make sure we're communicating because sometimes we'd come out like a steamroller and be like, this is happening tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. And I love how you said that, like working and we already have our process, but getting really clear and simple on what those core process
But I still want to push my team. So I figure out where their boundaries are and still push them a little bit because I think sometimes I have more confidence in my team than they have in themselves. And so that's fun to watch is them develop their own confidence and understand what they are good at that you see that they haven't figured out yet.
Oh, I truly do believe that you are your own worst critic.
Yeah.
Except for Brittany. Probably is not. But for most of us, 99%, we are the person that see the worst in us. And so to be with a leader who's inspiring you and that really empowers you is great. And like Daniel Pink's book, you give someone something to master and don't forget the why. Don't forget the why we're doing it. I think that's through our working geniuses, like you and I are galvanizers. Getting people rallied behind the why, and this is what we're doing, like giving them purpose. And now you give them an extra challenge, you're giving them something else to master. You give them the parameters, kind of what to work with them, but you give them the autonomy to do it. I've been on the recipient of exactly that, and that's one of the reasons why I've been here for so long is because I love that. I love something that I'm chasing.
Yeah. No, I did call myself a prophet earlier today. So.
I
Oh
don't
my
even know what
goodness.
to do with
I'm,
you.
I know. I'm
just-
going to
so
need context
funny.
on that later for sure.
But I will say, because, there are people who are natural leaders, right? And there are people who really love following. And I love both. I genuinely love being a follower. I love following my leader. I love, learning what, their strengths are or my strengths are and how we can work together.
Absolutely.
And it's so funny, something I tell my team leads a lot is people want to be led. They genuinely
By
want
good
to be
leaders.
led.
Yes.
And when you're able to tap into that, it's a whole new realm. And, going back to a little bit of my journey, one of the things I had to figure out was how people wanted me to lead versus how I was leading. And I was more authoritarian than they would have liked. And the compromise we found is more like a coach. Think of a football coach, and so I coach people to take my style, and then we're able just to have open and honest communication. And that's been really fun to see because
Yes.
I didn't necessarily have to change myself. I just had to give back that why and show my heart behind the intent.
Absolutely. That goes a long way when you're able to do that. And I'm also in the very similar. I want to be led. I love being a part of a team. That's just great. Love working and playing off of everybody's strengths and weaknesses. I don't want to have to always be that person, always lead. But when I do, and when I am, you learn early on that your personal growth ties in so much into how you're going to lead. And it will just rear its ugly head. So unless you're willing to work on yourself and fix those things, you would never be a good leader. And that taught me early enough the things that I really do love is being part of a community. And I love being a collaborative leader. That's where I work best. I love facilitating and working with the team, getting everyone's insights and input and helping us get towards a solution. Rather than to be the one to make all the calls or make this is what we're doing. I don't like that one because I don't always believe that I do know all the answers.
Yeah.
I most rather be in a room filled with intelligent people that are talented and creative. Everybody has earned their spot at the team, and then get everyone's input.
Well, and
from
it's
there.
fun too, as I don't want to say I'm old, but I'm older than a lot of the groups that we're in. And it's fun to see the perspective of someone who maybe is a generation or two younger. They look at it with a completely different set of eyes and like, oh, that's cool. So you just never know what's going to be thrown out there. And it may be something that you never even considered.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go rewind to 2020, COVID. And we were challenged with what the landscape and what the workforce was going to look like on the day-to-day basis. And I want to know how us as leaders with our team members made the decision that was really best for the organization and how it's really changed the way we lead today. What can y'all recall from that time?
Oh, man. So I was in the healthcare industry at the time. I was working at a hospital. So it was very real for us.
Yeah.
And basically they're like, okay, guys, you're going home. Everybody's going remote tomorrow. So it was a matter of throwing together a structure. So we went from 100% in office to 100% remote in one day. And so watching the team come together, like, okay, well, we changed our file structure. We changed our location. We changed everything. And it worked out just fine. But it was because we had built the team relationship prior to that. And then really they had the right to set their, kind of what their day-to-day looked like. It was completely different than it looked like when we were in the office.
Oh, wow. That was actually a very smooth transition from horror stories that I have heard.
We were ready. We had a good team.
That's
so.
great.
Yeah.
That's key when you have a great team,
Yeah.
especially great leaders too, that can help facilitate that process.
Yeah. I think it was really scary for us. There were so many unknowns, and it wasn't so much the remote work, even though a lot of them hadn't done it, including myself. I hadn't worked remotely. It was you couldn't leave your house. This was everything all in one. And, the people who lived in apartments and didn't have balconies or backyards, they really struggled. And that was something that we felt the camaraderie of everybody. We had just switched over to a cloud-based system and Microsoft Teams. Shout out to Microsoft Teams because I don't know if we would have been able to do it without that, of having these happy hours and making sure we were staying in touch. And all of our apartment people had their own group chat to talk through it and to talk about what they could do and different things that worked for them. And that was so much. like there was so much fun in that as well because of the coming together and the chaos, especially going back to managing versus leading. I lost a lot of visibility. You know, I wasn't there to see them and to see how they were doing. I can't tell, you know, what they're doing at their homes. And I just had to put a lot of trust in them and show them that, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing either. Like, I tried this schedule. It didn't really work for me. I tried to take a break at this time. And we were all just kind of creating these threads, and our quarterly plannings had to look different. And they ended up being like videos that people were commenting on in real time and having like live commentary that made it fun for them. And so it was scary, but we were able to make it through.
Absolutely. Like you said, it was scary because it forced you to give that autonomy. You lost the visibility. You really needed to trust. And if you were a leader in a leadership role here in particular, or maybe like in another organization, it would have highlighted for sure the deficits of your team if it was something that you were unable to like let go and fully just kind of embrace. One of the things that I do remember is that it changed. It was already a buzz around this time, like the culture in this generation, but it definitely created a higher demand for flexibility and a higher demand for being able to be hybrid or be fully remote. And for businesses, for the ones that did really well, you really lost the argument that you're not productive at home. If your team did do well, and so you have to honor that. You have to, and as a business, there are cost savings from being able to do that. But for the team member, even for myself, maybe not always when I had my kids at home, but that hour commute, like that I get back, it's probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending. I have a much more enriching life because of the time that I got back from being flexible. And so it did really change the landscape for Daniel Stark and how we were going to operate as leaders, and the flexibility, like how we were really going to hone into the autonomy portion of it, the flexibility, the being able to be remote, how that was going to look like at DS and still be able to provide our clients with white glove service and really, keep our clients from getting screwed by big insurance. So I'm excited for the next thing, hopefully not as awful as the pandemic was, but I'm waiting for that next thing that's going to happen, that's going to force us to do something different that we normally wouldn't have thought of.
Like force change.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, even today you still see a lot of the cancel culture with management. And I think some of that kind of came from the pandemic and kind of.
But I think it still goes back to trust, because if your team trusts you and respects you and you trust and respect them, they aren't going to go home and not do their job because they know it's going to let you down. So there's that, mutual respect back there, that whether you're here or at home or wherever you are doing your job, you're going to do it right because we trust each other. We depend on each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time, like, as an environment, people felt like they weren't listened to because, like you said, they've proven that they can work from home and that they're successful. And if their numbers are okay, why are we pulling this back? Like, why are so many companies saying everybody back in office tomorrow? And so I feel like it just made them feel really unheard and unseen. And so as a leader, being able to be like, hey, I want to know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle. Because I don't think we ever promise, like, oh, you'll get everything you ask for. Like, that's not realistic. And it's also not realistic as a leader that everything is going to go my way. And so there's some real benefit to compromise and keeping a culture that knows that compromise is on the table.
When you have the system and the process for expectations and accountability, like, that's what you need to be able to give that, to be able to give, if your team members is wanting flex or want the autonomy, put your trust in the system as well. And if you don't have that, if you don't have a system in place, like for us, we have remote huddles, we have monthly check-ins, we do have dashboards, we do have reports that we look at. We know if the work is being done, and we know how culture is. And even in a virtual setting, we can measure some of that. So if you have the right system in place that works for your organization, it's so much easier to be able to give your team members what they're needing because you have that in place. It's really hard to not be able to give your team members that. And for longevity and you want people tenured, you want people here, it's like, why not? Like,
Well, and it looks different too. So it may look different for ops than it does accounting because
yeah.
we have to print checks and we have to do. So there's some things. So, we have to be flexible between the team members. Somebody needs to be here to get a check run done or whatever. So as long as you're working together, so it just looks different from department to department, leader to leader. But you're right. Why not? If you've got it and it works.
For my team, I always love asking, what does autonomy look like for you? Because it may not be that they care about the flex hours. Maybe they're a 9 to 5 and that's how they like it. I like the 9 to 5. I'm structured. It's helpful for me. And so asking them, like, what does autonomy look like for you? How, and then depending on the role that they're in, how can I help that team member in a way that makes sense for like the entire department, not just a team member. It needs to make sense for the organization. How can we work towards that? And giving them a challenge. What's the next thing you want to grow in?
Well, and one of the things that I have found is in the culture we're in, being a working mom is hard. Not that being a working dad's not, but
just a working parent.
A working parent in general. So one of my team members, the biggest thing that she told me recently, she's like, I've been allowed to take my lunch really late in the day and pick my kids up from school. And that means the difference to her. So that's the difference between happiness and, if you're getting your done and she's setting her schedule and she also gets happiness out of it, then feels like we're all winning.
That's a big one for me. I normally do not like meetings to happen before 9 a.m. And that is because also as doing drop off in the morning in a college town is really stressful. And even from, I'm a millennial and I've never had my team leader, my supervisor ever tell me this, but I can imagine in the workforce that there are people who will just get up early and go do that early. Because I have tried that. But those extra 30, 45 minutes of sleep for my kids means that I'm waking up like on the happy side of bed versus it's just, you don't know what you unleashed in my house. And I don't want to come to work that way. It's like, I want to have a good morning with my kids. I value that for my children. I value being able to be unhurried in the morning and drop them off and just get my work day started. I come in at 8:45, get my day situated, and I'm ready to go by 9 a.m. Like, I place value in that. And there's a lot of that with our team members that they also place value in these different things. And so I think it's really great as a leader that you know what those are and that you're not trying to solve a problem that isn't really a problem, that you're actually solving the right things for your team. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the checkpoints that you can recall that you really like? Even in there's a question that we ask in our surveys that goes out on a monthly basis. That's, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the question? How
would you rate your leader or?
Yeah, how invested is your
leader in your success?
Yes. And for the most part, I've seen the ratings. They've all come up
very
really
good.
high.
We're coming up. I have not seen one lower than an 8 out of 10. And most of those people feel like their leader's taken time to get to know them. Their leader has found out what's important to them. And then they figured out how to intertwine that into the day-to-day. As I tell my team, most of us spend more time with each other than we do with our own families. And it's figuring out how to love what you do, get the job done, still be high-performing, kind of have your cake and eat it too. And our team feels like their leaders are pouring into them.
Yeah. What are some of the other insights that you've noticed and maybe in the feedback that you've gotten from your team?
So one of the things I like to see, because we asked 2 questions. The first one is how likely are you to refer a friend to Daniel Stark, and the second is about the leader. And so when they give feedback in the first category, it's completely separate from the leader category. And it's nice to see that they have an issue with the systems and processes, not with leadership and the culture. Where before we had that question, it felt like we had a culture issue. Like when that number was low, I'm like, man, what's going on? Do we need to look into it? And being able to differentiate it, it's like, oh no, they just think they have more ideas, they have more efficiency gains, which is what we talk about with them at quarterly plannings of how to gain some of those.
So a few of the things that I've noticed from the checkpoints that I've read is belonging to a community.
Yes.
Feeling like they're that their team lead actually believes in them. Like you said, has taken the time to empower them, to grow them. I think the other thing that I've noticed is, again, the autonomy.
Well, and we do exit interviews as well. And typically people are moving on for a change in their life, or maybe they've graduated school and it's time for them to move on somewhere else, or whatever it may be. But the exit interviews are also so positive because they feel like they're a member of a team. They feel like they have their voices heard. And I think a lot of the happiness is just feeling heard. We may not implement what you say, or it might not even be practical for the firm, but to have the opportunity to say it, that's a lot.
Absolutely. So from saying it and even to the ones that there were effort, we made effort to try to get it resolved, even if that doesn't happen. So let's talk about when we don't have the right leader installed. What are some of the signs that we normally see when you know that, okay, this is a leadership problem?
I think the first sign that I see is how they communicate. There's not a lot of warmth there. And I mean, again, going back, even using myself as an example of when I was more of a manager than a leader, just coming through as if this is just part of my job. I don't want to do this. This is just part of my job. I'm talking to you, just checking something off of a checklist, and then I'm going to move on. That's what you really start to see. That's the first step. And you may even give that a pass. Like, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe not all their meetings are like that. Not in all their meetings. Maybe that's not what it is. But then you start to see the effects of that, where their team members have more of low energy or, some bad attitude. Maybe they're carrying a chip on their shoulder. And you can sense that. It's really quick to see the difference in it. And that's when you step in and say, hey, is there something going on? I want to talk through this because I could be telling myself a story, but it feels like anytime this person talks to you, you want to roll your eyes. What's happening? Let's work through it. And I've been able to have those conversations and be a bridge for that leader and a person. But I think for me, that's the first thing I see is where the communication style is.
And kind of going right before that, our process, and I think it's a great process, is when we're going to put someone in leadership, there is a separate top 5 roles for that. That includes LMA, lead manager accountability. And you have to GWC it. So you have to get it, want it capacity and answer those questions. And the people that are maybe responsible for that role go through that exercise with them. So there's already a threshold. It's not just based off of mastery. And sometimes it's not even based off of institutional knowledge or mastery at all, because we hire leaders that are completely outside of the organization. But if you are hiring from within, we go through. And of course, there's culture. So they got to follow our social contract. They got to exemplify all of our core values over an extended period of time. So that's in place by the time they're in leadership. And then you actually give them their team and you're kind of monitoring that. You're seeing how they're doing. And then kind of rolls right into kind of what you're saying. Maybe you start seeing this. I know that in the past, for me, I have seen I don't feel like I'm getting the full story. There's definitely a hunch of like what's going on. Like there's the team members not cohesive. We're not aligned on the vision. We're not aligned on the goals. There's something coming in, and that's a little bit hard coming in when, this is not my direct team members, right? This is my team lead, and these are his directs. And so I'm coming in not boots on the ground, but I can see. So I have a high responsibility to really see if there's cohesiveness. And I can normally tell by the way those team members are engaged when they're in the room. If they're pushing back on what that leader has to say, and then I can tell, okay, there's really good, healthy, fighting, unite, good habits here. Could see that. I can see by the way that team lead may speak about their team. If it's positive, if it's or even if it's too overly positive, then it makes me feel like, okay, is there accountability here? Or if it's negative and it's passive and, it makes me think, okay, like, do we have a heart issue that we need to diagnose? What are some of the other things that you've noticed, Amy?
No, that's the same thing. I like to watch, especially a personal interaction. Like, how are they in the room together? How do they interact? How do they communicate? Is there some healthy pushback? And then the other thing is is that leader taking time? Because leading is not easy. It takes effort and it takes work. And are they truly bought into building this team up and putting personal effort into this? It's not just a title, and it's not just so you can get in there and tell people what to do. That's not what leading is about. And I kind of watch for that and make sure that they're looking to build these people up and help them, not just tell them what to do.
Absolutely. We say all guts, no glory. There's it requires a lot of guts. Let me ask you, do you think that anybody has what it takes to be a leader?
No.
Tell me why.
I do not. I think just because of what I just said, everything to be a leader, I feel like you have to have compassion for people. You have to have empathy for people. In addition to your skill set to get your job done, you have to want to build that person up and set them up to succeed. And not everybody has that. Some people just want to come in, do their job, go home. It's extra. It's on top of what you're doing, and it's in your heart. And if it's not there, your team will never succeed.
Yeah.
So
what about when you do have the heart? You have the heart. You want to take care of your team. What are some of the skills needed to be a good leader?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. I think being willing to admit fault is probably the first one I had to learn, is making sure that I could have some self-awareness. And I really deep dived into that pool of self-awareness, of making sure I was picking up on things that I wasn't seeing before. But I guess even before that, there was an accountability, because the only reason I knew those things was because my team members told me. And so having just that open style, the open dialogue with the accountability, knowing that you would take it, like them trusting you to be able to actually go and do the work. I think whatever that is where it has to start. Like them having, or you proving to your team, like earn your spot on the team. That means earning your spot with your team members as well. Like pick me as your leader.
And kind of what along the same thing, because I do agree that not everybody can be a great leader. And I think a lot of people can do their best to be a good leader and to even start managing a team. But it, kind of what you said, self-awareness, emotional intelligence is key in all areas of those emotional intelligence, your self-regard, your self-confidence, your ability to self-regulate and help others regulate as well. And there's so much that comes with emotional intelligence within itself. But then your ability to communicate is, if you cannot communicate with your team on expectations, on accountability, on in a way that it's inspiring or motivating as well, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
You're going to struggle in those areas.
I think a good leader realizes that each member of your team communicates a little differently.
Absolutely.
So you have to adapt that communication to what works best for them. So it's my job as a leader to figure out how to communicate with you. But I will tell you, some people are natural born leaders. So when you find one of those and you can, teach them how to use their powers for good, that's fun, because I may know a young person that can lead, but he'd lead a whole group right off a cliff and they'd follow him. So
discernment, that's another big one.
Growing some discernment and some maturity there, but then learning how to communicate in each person's style.
I think energy management's another big one too, because a good leader, they have to know when they're being burnt out. They have to know when to take a break and take a step back, because any good leader also has a really unhealthy side. And if you don't take care of that unhealthy side, it can be really ugly. And I also think that's, like, somebody can want it, but they're not acting in it because they're not in a healthy state of mind.
Absolutely.
That is why I love DS, because the leaders hold each other leaders accountable. So it would not be unusual for Brittany to call you up and be like, dude, you need a day off.
Yes.
Go fix yourself.
That's right. And not just doing that, like needing to know to do that for yourself, but when you're doing that to your team and being able to see that in your team as well, to be very highly perceptive is also another one. And I mean, once you're in that role, and depending at the level of leadership you're at, then you have to grow in some other areas, just high level strategic thinking, operationally. There's a lot more core competencies that you have to grow in to be a great leader for the business, not just a great leader for the people. And growing those at the same time is normally very hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do that. Most of the time you're a leader of the people, and you can motivate your team and get them towards the shared vision and goals and help them through that process, and while you're developing the business acumen of communication skills and, again, emotional intelligence, discernment, and strategy. But I learned that early on once I got to a different tier of leadership. And that was a hard lesson for me, that when it came to communication and growing my business acumen, was that my strategy is only as good as my ability to communicate it. And if I cannot communicate my strategy, it's dead on. That's it. And so learning those skills and learning your audience and what they want to hear and the problem you're solving just comes from a different area of personal and professional development, and kind of, the tools that I use for myself.
Your job as a leader is to take a big vision and make the whole team understand why that's even important. And there's a large gap there. There's a lot of conversations that are had over here that are not had with the team. And then so being able to translate that into something that shows them what their part in the mission is.
That is so key.
It
Absolutely.
is. Managers don't develop.
That's right. I'm just going to drop it there. We know that great leadership is what's going to take us to the next level. And investing in this is such high priority for any organization. There is, in all of our times that we've invested in leadership, and we know that there is a causation between great leaders and great results for the company. And we know that is one of the main key variables in achieving our 10-year target. So that's really exciting.
It's good for the people too. So
absolutely,
it's, in addition to being good for the company, it's so good for the team in general.
Yeah. Give your people autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's all the insights that we're going to unbox today. And if you have any suggestions on this topic, or have any topics you would like for us to cover, please send those to podcast@danielstarklaw.com. Till next time, stay remarkable.
Get ready, drop the confetti. Get ready, drop the confetti.